I'd like to open the stage for a wonderful speaker, Tanika. Tanika is such a wise space favorite. She's a dynamic entrepreneur and educator and co-founder of two innovative startups, Minutescale, which is a community learning network, and Click, which is a platform that helps creators amplify their content across different platforms. She has a strong foundation in education and research. Danica has owned her ability to foster transformative learning experiences in academia, entrepreneurship, and community environments. Her passion is leveraging technology and education to cultivate critical thinking, equity, and limitless innovation. Danica, we're so lucky to have you today, and I request you to open the session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alina. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and to share some of the learnings and my journey. Just as some quick context, I'm actually in San Francisco right now at a conference called SOCAP. I apologize for any background noise. I was trying to find like a quiet little corner to duck into, and it is not so quiet anymore. I could actually give you a really, really quick view of this beautiful installation that's behind me. Just to show you a little bit of what this space looks like. A lot of art around the space. There is kind of like a few different buildings that we are occupying for this conference. It's all about social impact. And so we're here looking to connect with folks who are interested in knowledge mobilization because that's something that we're very passionate about. So today I'm going to be sharing a bit about our journey building Minutescale and pivoting towards one click. And I will also share some of the learnings along the way. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get into it. You guys can see this. Awesome. All right, let me get Zoom out of my way and then we can get started. Okay, great. So this is part of my team. Not everybody's in this picture, but we have been working together for around 2 years now. And so what I want to share with you today is a bit of our story, what we've learned along the way in regards to how to ideate, how to build your MVP. And this, I think, is applicable to both tech and non-tech founders. How do you build, the initial sort of version of whatever it is that you're selling? How to pivot and when to pivot, and then pitfalls to avoid. So we will get into all of that, and I'll share some resources towards the end. So Minutescale. We started Minutescale in the summer of 2022, I believe. And Minutescale was all about solving for the problem of learning in the flow of your work. So when it comes to learning when you're working, there's not a whole lot of options when you just need a little bit of information to get through maybe a step in a process or to figure out how to do something new, how to keep up to date on evolving trends or themes in your work. And so typically people will go to maybe YouTube, social media, maybe blogs, articles, things like that. But it's really difficult to get that small piece of information that you're looking for. And so Minutescale was really about sharing bite-sized videos in small communities that feel like social media, communities of other people learning the same thing. And you being able to, just access a small amount of information as you go, as you learn in your work. And so what was interesting about Minutescale is that there was a lot of interest in bite-sized learning, but not really a good understanding of how to create bite-sized videos. And so with Minutescale, we created our MVP. We actually, so when we ideated this idea, we were in conversation with Antler Canada, and this was around January. Oh, I lied. So we started this in the summer of 2021, and in January of 2022, we were in conversation with Antler Canada. And so they chose to admit us to their program pre-product. We were building the MVP at the time, and we took around 8 months to build our MVP. We had eventually raised some funds with Antler, And so a significant portion of those funds went into building that MVP. And then when it came to selling Minute Skill, it became very challenging. We learned that our creators, they love the idea of bite-sized videos, but they really struggled with creating them. Their videos were typically 20 minutes to an hour long, similar to this workshop, and they would discuss many topics. And so they wanted to create smaller clips of each of those topics to make them more accessible at the point of need, make them more searchable and shareable. Of course, it's very difficult to share an entire webinar with someone and say, hey, go to minute 17 and watch the next 3 minutes. So we were helping them do that, or our intention was to help them do that, but we didn't realize that there was a step before using our platform that they couldn't solve for, which was creating those smaller clips. And so over time, and this was over the summer of 2022, we realized that there was no way to sell our MVP. We did end up selling to one customer, Schulich School of Business. They were very interested in bite-sizing a lot of their longer form workshops, and they actually hired a videographer to do that work, that manual work. And that's when we realized that it's not accessible. We can't ask all of our customers to hire a videographer just to use our platform. That wouldn't work. And so over time, we did end up running out of cash. It was a very scary time. I don't know if any of you are aware of the infamous June 2022 in the startup space. That's when investment really started to kind of crash. The financial market was experiencing a lot of precarity, and so people were investing a lot less. And so it was really difficult for us to raise any funds at that time, very difficult for us to try to sell the platform. And so it was a really scary time for our team. And so we had to come together and decide how we would solve this problem. What were we going to do? And so it was our CTO, Sina, who said one day, if the challenge is bite-sizing their content, I can create something maybe in a week that can do that automatically for them. And we will give them titles and descriptions for each of those clips to make them easier to share. And so we did that. We shared that with our initial customer market. They loved it. They were like, if you could make this easier to use, I would love it. And really at that time, it was just go to this website, upload your video, and then we will send you an email with all of the clips and the titles and descriptions for each of those clips in a spreadsheet. So it was very ugly. It was not easy to use, but they really liked the value that it delivered. And so we decided to do a little bit more market research to validate whether there was a broader sort of market here. And we discovered that there was. And then in December of 2022, we decided to pivot our entire business in that direction. And so that's where OneClick was kind of born. That's where it came about. And so now I'm going to give you guys my little 3-minute pitch. I pitched at the Black Founders Network Demo Day on this past Friday. And then I pitched here at SOCAP yesterday. And so this will probably be the fastest way I can give you a sense of what we do. And so, yeah, this is OneClick.
If I may add, Danica also won at the Black Founder Network, the pitch competition.
Yes, thank you. I won a $10,000 prize. That was great. Yeah. So this is OneClick. It's a creative assistant that helps you build your digital presence. And so we like to think of it as Iron Man's Jarvis, but for content creation. So imagine you're a business owner, you share videos for your business every week. And the more videos you share and the more eyes you get on those videos, the more customers, the more sponsors, the more revenue that you make. But you spend hours and you use dozens of tools just to share those videos with your audience. It's frustrating, it's time consuming, and it's expensive. So we've built a personal creative assistant that does those tasks for you. So instead of fighting with 3 different software and ChatGPT, your assistant will find those shareable moments in your video, customize them for every platform, and generate thoughtful copy that sounds just like you. And so very soon, instead of fighting with software, you will just have a simple conversation with your assistant to create, share, and manage your content everywhere. So again, thinking of Jarvis, but for content creation. So instead of, maybe searching for your next idea, thinking about how to write this, how to phrase that, you would just talk to your assistant for recommendations and it would actually generate content with you. And so our customers, they're already doing extraordinary things with their content. They are landing jobs, they build entire businesses, they amplify their digital presence. And we are just getting started. So One Click was released into the market just a few months ago, and we are already almost doubling our monthly recurring revenue month over month. And we haven't even released the conversational experience of our platform publicly yet. This is the team. I'm the prompt engineer. It's like a snake whisperer to these AI models. Nathan is our head of business. He basically dates our customers. Sina and Sina design and code the product. And our resident icons, Mano, Mike, and Carm, they amplify our mission to the world. And we win because we never give up. As you could tell through the pivot, through the hard times, we don't give up. But we also know something that most people don't, which is that we are experiencing an extraordinary technological evolution, the greatest in human history, potentially, bigger than smartphones, computers, the internet, all of that. The days of manually using software are quickly coming to an end. We believe everyone will call on assistants like ours to do tasks for them. And there's never been another moment like this, and no better time to build. And so we do go on to share a bit of our fundraising. We are raising a seed round. I won't include those details in this pitch right now, but that's essentially what we have created from our pivot out of Minute-Skill into One Click, is a more all-encompassing assistant that helps people, amplify their digital presence, and really specifically focusing on educational content creators who have a lot of knowledge to share, but they're not marketers, they're not copywriters. And so they need that support in order to do those more mundane and repetitive tasks. And so we've started with repurposing, and Alina and the Y-Space team have graciously been using our platform to generate content alongside these wonderful sessions, to share that content in ways that meets their audience, the way that they want to consume the content, whether it's through a blog, whether it's through maybe a newsletter or a shorter video with a summary. That's where we're at right now, and we're moving into this more conversational assistant that can help with creation and management in our next sort of phase of our roadmap. So, what are the lessons that we've learned along the way? I've broken this into a few different spaces, and I want to talk about ideation first because this is the most important phase, I would say, and also probably where most of you are at right now. So I think it's really important to choose the right idea space or the right problem space. And by this, I mean, what space are you operating in? What kinds of problems are you trying to solve? And there tends to be some pitfalls that, a lot of founders or early stage business owners can tend to fall into. And so I really recommend watching Y Combinator's YouTube channel. And I will share some videos in the chat towards the end. But they have a really great video on how to choose startup ideas. And I think whether you are a startup or a small business with a physical product, etc., I think that a lot of the rules there apply, which is that, for instance, you don't want to choose a problem that is so difficult. They call it a tar pit problem. It's so difficult. You're not actually able to make any movement because of broader, maybe more macro challenges that are outside of your control. This could be related to regulation. It could be related to your market's willingness to adopt technology. And so you can already think of some spaces like health tech or healthcare being really challenging spaces to operate in. And so unless you have a lot of that experience and the connections needed and the time and maybe some capital, those spaces tend to be really difficult spaces to operate in. And so you want to be very careful about what space you want to build in and ensure that you're passionate about it and that you have enough, interest and knowledge to operate in that space effectively. You don't have to have a ton of industry or domain expertise. You don't have to be, for instance, in our context, a content creator for 10 years in order to start a business like ours. But you need to have passion and you need to have a willingness to learn. And so you also need to make sure that you choose the right space for you. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have a ton of experience as an operator in that space. It just means that it's a space that you can actually move the needle in, and it's a space that you're very passionate about because you're going to be doing this for many, many, many years and through a lot of challenges. So you want to be really, motivated through those things. You want to also validate your problem. You want to do that well. So another resource I'm going to share with you is the MOM test. It's a book by Rob Fitzpatrick, and he outlines how to talk to your customers. And again, I think this is important regardless of what kind of product you're selling. You want to validate that your problem is a problem worth paying for. And so a lot of the time we may, want to solve a problem that we think is interesting or exciting for us, but it doesn't necessarily matter to our customers. And it's really difficult to figure out whether your problem actually matters to your customers without speaking to them and without having a specific kind of method for speaking to them. A lot of the times, we might fall into the pitfall of asking somebody what they think about our idea. And that's challenging because then your ego is on the line and they may not want to hurt your feelings. And so you kind of set them up to lie to you potentially, and you can't really control whether they do or they don't. And so in this book, The Mom Test, he talks about an approach, a method for asking questions where your ego is never on the line and you don't allow your customers to potentially lie to you. And so the way to do this is, first of all, don't ask them about, well, would you ever use this? Or do you think this is a good idea? These are kind of hypothetical, fluffy questions that can lead to them kind of telling you anything that they think you might want to hear. Instead, you want to ask about, their experience of the problem. How do they experience the problem today? What do they do when they experience the problem? Specifically, what do they do? Like, walk me through the last time you experienced this problem. They're probably going to talk very specifically about what they actually did rather than hypothesize around what they might do in future if certain circumstances were aligned. And so asking about specific material past experiences can be much better for you to learn real facts about their life and understand whether or not this is a problem worth solving for them. I think that it's really important to validate your problem before you start building your MVP, because as we saw with Minute Skill, the problem was not actually worth paying for. It was actually not the most immediate and urgent problem. Bite-sizing their content was a nice to have. Or sorry, I should say sharing their content in a platform where it's bite-sized was a nice to have. But before they could do that, they really had to figure out how to bite-size their content. And so being able to share it into a community was just like, great. If I can get my stuff together in order to do that, then that's awesome. Maybe I'll do that. But at the moment, I can't do that. And so it wasn't the most urgent problem. It wasn't a problem that would be worth paying for because it doesn't directly impact their business as a creator. And so we needed to better validate that problem. And I won't tell you like that it was because we didn't try. We had over 200 interviews with a variety of folks to understand this problem, but we weren't always asking the right questions. And so it was very difficult for us to figure out there was a deeper problem underlying this challenge that we were trying to solve. So when you're trying to figure out, whether you're solving the right problem and whether it's something worth paying for, definitely read that book to learn a little bit more about that methodology and some of the types of questions you can ask. But also really try to figure out, is this a problem that, impacts my customer's bottom line? Or impacts their values, their value set. Am I saving them money or am I making them money? Am I saving them time? Am I helping them reinforce their values? Am I contributing to something that they really care about deeply, something that's maybe even connected to their identity? What makes the problem you're solving so impactful for your customers? You really need to sort of flesh that out in detail. And then also ask yourself, what is the number one assumption that I'm making about my customers? And if I were to get that assumption wrong, then my business would fail. And so in our case, with Minute Skill, we thought that the assumption was that people want to share bite-sized videos. If people don't want to share bite-sized videos, then Minute Skill wouldn't be successful. But the challenge was that we were actually asking the wrong question. Whether people want to share bite-sized videos or not doesn't matter if they can't share bite-sized videos. So the question that we should have been asking, the hypothesis or the assumption that we really had, was that people can bite-size their content. And the answer to that was no, they can't. And we didn't realize that until much, much later. And so this is all part of the problem validation phase. Really talking to folks who experience the problem, learning as much as you can about the workflow and their daily life, what their life looks like without you and without their product or your product right now. And then figuring out whether that problem that they experience is really worth solving. And then you can go on to figure out how to solve that problem. So a few lessons around building your initial product. The first thing I want to say is do not overbuild. So whatever the product is, whether it's a physical product, whether it's a service, whether it's software or some kind of tech, it's really important at the initial stages not to invest too much time and resources into building that initial product. I say this because your initial product is going to be the crappiest version of itself that will ever exist. You know, it's meant to be the worst version of whatever it is you're creating. And so the only real way to learn how to improve your product, to create something that does truly provide value and is worth buying, is by getting that into the hands of your customers as soon as possible and seeing how they actually use it, and then iterating with their feedback. Your customers are really the only people who know like what it is that they need. They can't tell you what to create or what product to build, but they can tell you their challenges and what they need or what would help them to do their jobs to be done much faster and much better. And so it's your job to hear that feedback and that what they desire and turn that into a product that actually solves this problem. So don't invest too much time into overbuilding your MVP. As I mentioned with Minute Skill, it took us 8 months. 8 months of money, time, resources, mental energy, all of it. You know, you pour your whole soul into this. And then, you know, at the end of 8 months, somebody tells you, oh, well, this isn't actually doing what I need. And so it would be much better if you spent a week or 1 month or 3 months to get to that point rather than 8 months. So try to ship your product as quickly as you can. And I do recognize that it is a bit of a privilege. I know some founders who are working in health tech. And so you can't really, you know, cut corners there. You can't really build fast and scrappy. But for those who can, I really encourage you to do that. And don't worry about the product not being perfect. We sometimes think as founders that if the product isn't perfect, our customers are going to hate it and they're never going to like come back to us again. And in actuality, that doesn't often happen. And even if it did, there are tons of customers out there. You could find more. And so it's actually better to get something that's crappy into the hands of real customers early so that you can learn from them and build something that's not crappy. That's just the natural progression of it. You're never going to build an MVP based on your own team and kind of in your own thought silo that actually meets the needs of your customers initially. Like that's never going to happen. You need to build it in conversation with your customers. So the sooner you can do that, the better. This is how you validate your solution. So the MOM test not only talks about customer discovery before your product. It talks about how to talk to your customers about your product specifically. And really what you want to do is learn about how they use it. You don't really want to ask like, hey, how much do you like it? They're going to say, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It saved my whole life. You actually want to ask them, can you show me how you use it? Can you maybe screen record yourself, or can you hop on Zoom and just show me how to use the product? And how you use it within the context of your workflow. And so that will help you understand whether the solution is actually solving the problem, and whether it actually helps your customer maybe do something faster, save time, save money, etc. So really want to always talk to your customers every step of the way. When it comes to building the MVP, I also encourage to start small and really focus. And I'll give you an example. With Minute Skill, we started really broad. We wanted to have any kind of educational content on the platform. And so you could imagine, you know, when you have a platform where people are trying to find content that's specific to them, if you start with everything and anything, the number of categories on that platform is going to be a lot. And then the content under each category is going to be sparse, because finding creators to fill out all of those content niches is going to be very, very difficult and time consuming. And so we realized that we needed to niche down into a specific area. So we focused on business and tech. And honestly, we should have focused even more. And I would have maybe pulled that back to one specific niche, like maybe UI UX, for people who are product designers and they want to learn about UI UX and just hear tips and different kind of things that they can implement to get their job done better. There's a ton of things under UI UX that we could have talked about. And so those would have been the categories, and it would have been much easier to find UI UX creators on YouTube, and then bring them into the platform, rather than trying to find creators in, you know, marketing and leadership and all sorts of, you know, business and tech themes. And so that was a huge challenge that we had, and it made our go-to-market very challenging, very like a lot slower than we would have hoped. It felt like there was a lot of momentum, a lot of different people joining, but each of those content pillars were scarce. And so it might feel like, you know, we all have really big ideas. We want to do extraordinary things. So it might feel like you're not fulfilling your vision by scaling back and starting small, but it's actually the best way to achieve your vision. And so with one click, for instance, when it came to building the MVP, we had this vision of creating this all-encompassing content creation assistant that can just help you, you know, figure out what you need to create next, and help you share your videos, and even write the video scripts, and then analyze your performance data to understand what's working and what's not working. But we had to start somewhere small and focused, and something that's easy to go to market. An area where the problem is so, you know, dire, and it impacts our content creators' livelihoods, that they would be willing to pay for it. And that's why we focused on video repurposing, because the more platforms that they share their content to, it directly impacts how much revenue they make. And so it was a clear, you know, cost benefit analysis to our creators, that it costs them a lot less time and money to use our product than to do what they typically do. And so we're starting, with just that one task. We're going to repurpose your videos. And we started with, I think, 2 or 3 platforms, maybe like Instagram, TikTok, and blogs. And that was all we had. And the platform didn't really have much video editing. Like you would only get topic-based clips. There was no clips for like Instagram and TikTok. There was no like vertical aspect ratio. There was no captions on the video. Like you couldn't put any of that on there. Now we have all of those things and more. We have really robust blogs and newsletters, and we're just kind of building it out step by step. But if we tried to do everything at once, we would do most of those things kind of mediocre. And then there wouldn't be, you know, any kind of unique value proposition for our customers to come to us instead of others. So starting small and really focusing can be actually more of a superpower than a limitation. So now I want to talk about pivots, and I want to just check my time here. So when it comes to pivoting, I want to clarify what I mean by pivoting versus iteration. A pivot is when you change the problem you're solving. An iteration is when you change the solution to the problem you're solving. And so you should always iterate. You should always be constantly updating and revising and iterating your solution. But you should pivot very rarely, because when you change the problem you're solving, you're kind of starting from scratch in terms of understanding that problem deeply in order to solve it well. And so when we pivoted, we had, of course, a clear need to pivot. We couldn't sell the product that we had. We also did a lot of market research to understand, is this a broader problem for folks? Is this a significant bottleneck in the content creation lifecycle or workflow? And we validated that that was the case. And is this market big and is it growing and all of those things? So you should, pivot when your customers tell you to and when the data tells you to. You shouldn't be, trapped in, I think Y Combinator calls it this kind of pivot hell where you're just constantly changing the problem that you're solving. That's not the area you want to be in. You want to be very thoughtful about when you pivot. I want to also encourage you to fail fast, as you've probably heard that phrase, and you'll fail again and again and again. And really what I mean here is it's important to take risks. It's important to move on impartial information. Like as a business owner, you're never going to have perfect information to make decisions on. It's just important that you make a decision and you move forward with it. And so I would say don't be too afraid of pivoting and thinking that that's a signal of failure. Failure is very common in business and especially in the startup space. It's a necessary piece or part of the process. And so you got to get really comfortable with things maybe not working out or maybe going not the way you intended or going a little slower than you intended, because it's really important to just make those decisions and test experiment so that you understand, okay, that was a bad path, that's a bad path. Now I know this path is the one that we should go on. But if you're taking a long time and you're too afraid to try those different things, you'll never really find that good path. It requires a lot of experimentation and a lot of risk to get there. And so, yeah, when it comes to pivoting, you just really want to have a thoughtful approach about it. You want to test different maybe theories around the direction that you want to go in. And so for us, part of our pivot experience was really building out that really scrappy, ugly beta version that we sent to people in their emails, a spreadsheet. It looked horrible, right? We had to take the time away from what we were doing, which was a risk, to build that and then share that with our customers. And we already knew like this is not what we want to really share with our customers. This looks horrible, but we need to test the hypothesis as to whether this is what they need. And if that crappy version could deliver the value that they needed, then we could, yeah, go in that direction and actually build something that's easier to use and talks to them eventually. And so that was a huge risk, as well as, of course, like sunsetting minute skill and telling our current customers on the product, hey, we're not going to offer this anymore. We're going in a new direction. Making the decision to pivot was very, very critical. We made that decision over a few months and we probably could have made it sooner. But it was really important not to drag our feet on that because as you all know, it was, I think, November of 2022 that ChatGPT hit the world and everybody started looking at generative AI. And so if we had dragged our feet any longer, we wouldn't have had any kind of advantage in terms of creating a product like this. So it's really important to do that quickly. And then the last piece here that I want to share with you is that you're going to launch your product, whether again, it's a physical product, a service, a software or other kind of tech, you're going to launch your product again and again and again. You're never going to launch your product once and then it's just like, oh, okay, here it is. And the world knows, like people sometimes we think like our launch is going to be this big spectacular thing and everybody's watching and it's the only time we're going to get to do this. That's not the case at all. Usually when you launch, first time especially, nobody cares. Nobody cares. When you do it again, usually a little more people care, but not very many. And also when you launch, it's never going to be that perfect vision of what you want. You just need to get something out there so that you can, again, iterate on that and make it better and eventually get to that fuller vision. We've launched One Click many, many times. I can't even tell you how many times since we first kind of, I mean, the first launch was a closed beta. So just people who had signed up, we didn't launch it publicly. And that was in March of 2023. We launched publicly in April. We launched again in June. I think we launched again in July or August just recently. We're already, we just updated our website and we're already talking about the next update for the next launch of this next feature set. So you're always going to be launching and kind of iterating and launching again. Don't see it as a sign of failure. Don't be afraid of that failure. It's actually a natural part of the process that you can get better at what you do. And what I really want to encourage here is that learning is an extremely important aspect of being a business owner and a founder. And Alina, let me know if it's too loud, by the way. I'll try to like tuck into the corner a little more. It's good? Okay. Folks are getting a little rowdy across the way. But yeah, learning is an extremely important skill set as a business owner and as a founder, because everything that you're doing is likely something that is new to you and could even be new to your space. I mean, for us, generative AI is extremely new to everybody. And so it's important for you to, you know, experiment, try something, learn from what you've done, learn from your customers, and then iterate based on that and adapt your behavior based on your market, right? Not what you think your market wants, but what your market has actually told you it needs. And so that's an important process here when you're pivoting, when you're launching again and again. Anytime you ever experience something that you think is failure, you got to learn from those experiences so that you can continue to do better. And so, yeah, it's really just about learning and adapting. So I want to share some pitfalls to avoid. I think one that is really common is holding on to the solution that you've built. I think that you should hold on to the problem that you're solving and the people you're solving it for very tightly. You should hold on to your solution very loosely. Most of the time, as I mentioned, what we build initially, what we share or launch initially, is not necessarily the best thing that our customers need. The only way to get to that, you know, ideal product is through conversation and iteration with your customers. And so if you hold on to what you've built too tightly, if it doesn't solve the problem enough for your customers, they don't care about it. They won't care about it. Let's think in our own daily lives. We're all very busy, right? Very, very busy. It feels like we're getting busier by the day. And so if there's something that somebody's offering you that doesn't actually truly provide value to you, you're not going to invest the time into it, especially if that person's a stranger. And so this is part of not being afraid of failure, right? Is recognizing that the solution that you build may not be what people need. And so you need to listen to what they want and change your solution. So you should always be iterating your product. It should always be getting better based on the feedback that you get. And so don't be afraid to admit like, oh, I had it wrong. Like chances are you have it wrong. Like early in the early days, you probably have it wrong, but that's part of the process, right? So don't be afraid of that. Like that's necessary for you to get to the right product. And so you got to embrace that entire process and really like hold on to your solution lightly. So yeah, fear of failure, I think, is something that tends to hold people back. You know, we're sometimes afraid to, yeah, admit that we were wrong or admit that we don't know what we're doing or that we don't know, we didn't know what to do at that time. And so I know for tech founders, I'm sure for a lot of business owners, there tends to be a lot of imposter syndrome. The feeling that maybe we're not good enough or that we don't know enough to be doing what we do. And so I want to say, you know, that feeling is totally normal and I think natural just in terms of the space we're operating in. But it's also important to check those feelings and remind yourself that you know, those feelings are not real or not true. That's not actually the case. You're the best person to do what you're doing. You and your team are the only people who will eventually find product market fit for your product. You're the only people who will solve the problem that you're trying to solve for your customers in the way that you're trying to do it. And so, yeah, don't be, I want to encourage everyone here to not be too afraid of failure, because it's definitely part of the journey, and it is a necessary part of the journey. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that what you had in mind or the path you were taking previously was wrong. Like, that's fine. Again, totally normal, natural part of the process. And if you look at any great company, especially look at Y Combinator companies, they pivoted. And initially, their first product was not what they were building now. And they failed a few times along the way. And I realize now I didn't explain who Y Combinator is. So I'm going to take a quick moment for anybody in the crowd who does not know what Y Combinator is. It is a global accelerator and a huge, you know, educator in the startup space. An accelerator or incubator is very much like Y-Space, where they provide educational content and support to help build businesses, in Y cases context, specifically tech businesses, tech startups. And they've invested in some of the biggest startups we know, like Instacart, Coinbase, Twitch, and a whole number of other startups, Airbnb. And so in the context of Twitch and Airbnb, Twitch, when it first started, was actually a company called Justin TV. Justin was one of the co-founders, and he basically live streamed his life 24/7. That was the company, right? And Twitch today is a live streaming service for anybody. And so you can see how it was very different, and they probably had to fail a few times along the way and pivot their ideas and really change what they thought was valuable to their customers. And they were able to do that pivot in and through their time at Y Combinator. Airbnb, I mean, at a certain point in time, they were selling cereal just to survive. And a lot of people didn't understand, you know, the service that they were providing in the early days, and nobody wanted to invest in them. And so, yeah, you know, they literally almost closed down because they couldn't get the funds that they needed to operate. And it took them years. Like Twitch, it took them, I think, 8 years to get to product market fit. Airbnb, don't quote me on this, but it might have been 6. So it took them a long time to get there. It took them a long time of just like failing and experimenting and failing again. And so, yeah, I just really want to encourage you to look at some of these examples and hopefully feel a lot less afraid of this concept of failure, because it is honestly part of the process. And I think that avoiding it can tend to delay some of the success that you're looking for. When you embrace the failure and you're able to pivot when needed or iterate very quickly and experiment very quickly, you can get to where you're wanting to go a lot faster. And the last thing I want to share here is the idea that investment solves all problems. And I want to preface this by saying, you know, I understand that there is a need to seek funds maybe a little early, because we live in a capitalist world where we got to pay to live, you know, and so we got to work somehow and receive some kind of income in order to pay our rent and food and other kinds of living expenses. And so sometimes it might feel like you need investment just so that you can operate. And so I want to kind of share some of my learnings from this, which is that like traditional investment, specifically I'm talking, I guess, in the tech space or tech context, but VCs and traditional investment, they do not invest in keeping you and your team alive. That's just not what those investment vehicles are for. And so when it comes to something like that, you got to look for alternative resources like accelerators who can connect you to grants and other kinds of non-dilutive funding. But also that investment at the end of the day, it doesn't actually get you to something called product market fit. So product market fit is this concept wherein, and there's a lot more research on it, but I'm just going to generalize it here. your product solves the problem so well that your customers are just kind of insatiable. Like they're coming at you and they want more and more of that product, even more, I would say more so than you can provide it. You know, you have a higher demand than what you can service. That's kind of one of the indicators of product market fit. Your product fits your market very, very, very well. And so that's a challenge. Most businesses, most startups never get to product market fit. And as I mentioned, it took Twitch 8 years to get to product market fit. And so this is probably the biggest challenge you're trying to solve for as a company, building the right product such that you find product market fit. And so I want to tell you, you know, investment doesn't get you to product market fit. Investment doesn't speak to your customers and understand what your customers need. And investment doesn't build that solution in a way that helps them. Investment can definitely help you pay for your staff and your team and your overhead and all of that. But investment alone, like even if you have the money to pay for your operations, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to build the right product. And so in our context with MinuteSkill, we were able to get a little bit of investment, and we used that to build the product. It was the wrong product. And so we weren't able to sell it. And we had to pivot to find the right product. And we had to dig deep in our team and ourselves to figure out what that right product was. And we did that with no funds in the bank. And so we solved that problem ourselves. And so really and truly, the only people who can solve the most important challenges for you and your business are you and your team. And so granted, yes, we all need money to live, but be selective about where you go to get that money, because you might end up wasting a lot of time chasing investors that have no intention of investing because of the purpose, right? They're there to 10x their investment, not to, you know, pay for you and your team to live. That's a really, really challenging reality to live in. Unfortunately, that's just the space. But there are great resources and great people like the Y Space team that can help to connect you to those resources. And at the end of the day, it really is just your team and your team's grit that's going to get you there. So I will share some resources in the chat after I finish sharing my screen. Y Combinator, they focus on tech startups, but I do think they're a valuable resource for anybody starting a business. A lot of the lessons they share are transferable across any business. They have a YouTube channel. They also have a startup school. They offer all of those resources completely free. And then, of course, they have an accelerator program that you can apply to. They will fund you and they will support you. And I can answer more questions around that if folks have them. The Mom Test is a book I'm going to share with you. I think you can get it on like a free trial on Audible for like 3 months. You won't need 3 months. If you listen to the book, it's like 3 hours. So I highly recommend checking that out. And then Ripen is a really good resource for getting student talent to help on specific projects. So how it works is you would set up a project. The project should encompass no more than 80 hours of work. And then Ripen will help match you with students who will complete those projects for you, and Ripen will pay those students. You don't pay them anything out of your pocket. It's called the Ripen Level Up program. I will share that link in the chat. And these can be projects like marketing, could be social media, creating social media content, managing your social media. It could be around product development, although dev resources are very challenging to come by. It could be around, you know, just setting up your business, whether it's like your business plan and other kinds of things. So really any kind of discrete project or task that you can kind of section off. You can have students work for you, and your students can actually work for the same company on multiple projects. So you can have one student complete 5 different projects for you. And I mean, 80 hours part-time is roughly, like you could do anything from 2 to 4 months of work. And so you could get even a whole year with students through Ripen. So it's a really, really great resource. So that is all I have to share with you. I would love to hear your questions. And then I will also start sharing these resources in the chat.
This was amazing, Tanika. It's always a treat listening to your story and your journey. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. We are opening the floor for questions. You can leave them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question. Oh,
Hi
I
there.
think. Hi, Rose.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for organizing today's chat. I could really relate and I could use some advice because right now it's more of I kind of like bootstrap my project, and I'm now in the in a particular period where I'm ready to market. So the market acceptance is good, but I just wanted to have a concerted effort in terms of digital marketing my product. So what do you suggest, or as when you actually did your market your product in the public, what do you suggest is the best way to market? Should we have like a concerted effort in terms of putting the product out there in terms of marketing activities, or it's like a trial and error, or should you just go there and put it out there and hope for the best? What's the best
Yeah.
how you did it?
Yeah, what a great question, Rose. Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of folks who are thinking about this. And so I cannot tell you specifically what methods will work for your business. I don't have enough information, but I can tell you how to figure that out. And so it's going to be different for everyone, but I highly recommend, I'm going to point to the mom test again. So customer discovery is the best way to understand not only the problem and the solution that you should build, but how to communicate to your customers, how to find them. And so you'll want to have interviews, conversations with your customers to understand where they go right now when it comes to finding solutions like yours. So I'll give you an example. I know a founder who is building an app for new parents to track the development of their newborns. And so she wants to understand, like, how do I market my app? And so she's going to want to talk to her customers and understand, well, where do you go for information about like the development of your child right now? Where do you go to get recommendations for new apps that you download to your phone? Like, do you ever go to the app store and scroll? Is it only people who recommend it to you? Or maybe you're in Facebook groups where people are sharing information about the development of their children and resources, and maybe they share apps as well. And so, in that context, if that were the case, she would want to market in Facebook groups, right? If Google is a place they go, she might want to invest in SEO and have blog articles. Maybe parents go to blogs and they try to read up on how to track their baby's cognitive and motor development. And so you really only get that information from your customers, asking them what they do right now, not where would you like to go, or where, like, if you saw this on Instagram, would you? Instead, you want to ask them the last time you downloaded an app or the last time you looked for information about the development of your baby, where did you go? What did you do? And then those things that they do now, you're going to want to align your business or align your marketing to that, because people are not going to create new habits for your business. You want to align your business activities to the habits that they have right now. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Highly, highly recommend the book. He gives you a lot of examples of the types of questions to ask.
I see. And secondly,
Mm-hmm.
on the funding, on the funding side, where to go get funding? Because right now, as you said, there are people who are just kind of like wasting your time, right? They want you to chase after them, but they have no intention to really put out their money out there for your project. So what I'm having right now is I go to people that I know who trust me in what I'm doing to get some funding. But based on your experience, what is the biggest amount that you have gotten from one funder, and what is the smallest amount that you have gotten from one funder?
Yeah, I think the sources of funds will vary business to business, depends on what type of business, the stage that you're at. And so I'm not able to tell you specifically who, but I do think it's a good idea to go for folks who are warmer in your networks when you're early. You want to go to more like smaller angels if you're in tech. If you're in a product or service-based market, you might want to look at grant opportunities from organizations that support small businesses. You might want to connect with organizations like the Chamber of Commerce through groups like YSpace to talk to folks who will know where to find those grants. Because honestly, looking for grants yourself can be extremely exhausting and time consuming. So you want to find people who understand the grant space and understand what resources are out there, and then they can support you in accessing them. And then to answer your last couple of questions, the most that we've gotten from a single investor was $220,000 from Antler Canada. And then the least was like $6,000 from an angel investor in the US. And we've also gotten like $50,000 checks, so it can vary quite a bit. If you're a tech company raising on a safe note, a standard agreement for future equity is what it's called. A safe note is a helpful way to get funds without needing a bunch of legal support, and you can close as much or as little money as you want on a safe note, literally from $6,000 up to like $1 million. So that's a helpful resource as well. I'm going to share my LinkedIn in the chat as well, because I did see some folks wanting to connect. I will kind of preface it with my LinkedIn is insane. Yeah, reaching out to me in my LinkedIn inbox, you may not get the fastest reply, but you can start there in terms of connecting and just kind of following up on our story. And if you do really, really, really want to reach out to me, please let Alina know, and then she can share my email.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And then Rose,
Awesome.
just building on your question, in fact, our next week's workshop is on funding and grants. So that'll give you more information as to where and how you can find a suitable grant or funding opportunities for yourselves. So make sure that you're registered for next week's workshop as well. Moving on, Arnaud, I saw that you had unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
Hey there, yes, I do have a quick question. Hi, Jalika, and congratulations on the launch of your startup. So I had a quick question. So I'm launching a digital omni-channel reward program, and I'm in the process of validating the idea we actually the white space. I haven't fully done the research about how do you talk to the customer before talking. How do you find the customers and interviewing them about what you just said about validating basically the idea? So can you just give me or us an idea of how do you find customers? Where do you find them, and what's the scene like? How does it begin?
Yeah, Arnaud, what a great question. Thank you. So it definitely varies depending on the type of customer you're looking for. So you do want to know your customer a little bit. I'll give you a couple of examples. So new parents with newborns probably are not going to LinkedIn for that information. So you could expect maybe something like Facebook groups are a better place to find them, versus professionals probably are on LinkedIn. And so in the very early days, in the context of maybe professionals, I could tell you what we did for One Click was we went on LinkedIn and we tried to find as many social media managers as we could, because we thought for sure, that's probably a group that we want to speak to. And then we came to learn, well, marketing agencies are also a group we should speak to. And so I guess something to clarify here is that you want to get really, really specific about the target audiences that you want to capture. In the early days, you should have many that you're just testing, right? So you might have like 5 to 10 personas, and you want to see which ones get really excited right away and then hone in on those specific personas. But yeah, to your question, in terms of finding them in the initial days, you want to have a sense of who they are and then make an assumption about what digital places those people hang out. And maybe sometimes you might actually go in person and try to find them in person, depending on your business. But yeah, it starts with an assumption. So we thought, okay, our folks are probably on LinkedIn. They're probably on Instagram. So we're going to go to those spaces to try to find them. We've even gone so far as to find content creators on YouTube that we really liked, watch their videos as soon as they come out and comment, like leave a comment on their video because they're going to engage. They like that engagement. And if you comment thoughtfully and they start to see you pop up a lot more, they're more likely to answer an email from you later on. And so we've done that as well. And so, yeah, it's just about like making that initial assumption as to where they are and then starting to test that assumption with different experiments. So it could be leaving a comment on their content and really getting your face kind of there before you reach out. It could be sending cold emails to folks or cold LinkedIn messages just to start to see who actually responds. There's also something that Y Combinator shares, and I recommend watching some of these videos. We will definitely share these links later in an email, but how to talk to your users. And I think there's one that I will share around like how to find your users. And so they recommend like cold emails are a good way to start, but obviously there's lots of problems with that. You're not going to have a high return rate on that or a click-through rate. But they mention that, you know, only 5% of the population are actually early adopters. The personality that is required to try something new that you've never heard of before is very rare. And so your job in the initial stages is just trying to figure out who that type of person is. So you're not going to get a ton of replies. But once you do start to get those hits where people feel really excited about what you have, even if it's the crappiest version of your product that will ever exist, those are the types of people you want to hone in on. And that's when you start to get really specific about who they are. And so for us, it's like content creators with 30,000 followers on YouTube. They're active on different platforms. They have a course or they sell consulting services on the side or not on the side. That's their main business. But the video content is how they market their services. So you can get really, really specific. But in the beginning days, it's really like an assumption about where they tend to be online and then just experimenting with different ways to reach out to them and seeing what works and then doubling down on what works with whom.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up on that, what's an acceptable number of customers who will be validating your idea? I read somewhere where it says about 25 customers is a enough number to, or does it have to be more than that?
I would say there's no exact number. You could have one customer. The thing is that how does your product make that customer feel is the question. Are they ecstatic about it? Do you change their life in some way? Like those are the indicators that you've created real value. Because the thing is, if you can create real value for one person, there's so many people in the world, there's probably millions of people who are just like them in terms of personality, in terms of workflow and challenges they experience. And so it's not about whether you can find 25 or any set number to validate you initially. You might not be able to find them simply because you don't have the right channels yet, but they exist, right? And so what you really want is just one customer that's like, yeah, I will pay you no matter what. And you want to know, like, if they could never access your product or service again, how would they feel? Would they be extremely disappointed? If that's the case, you're creating real value. And so you only need to do that for that one individual, and you will then figure out how to find more people like them. But if they're lukewarm, if they're kind of like, you know, it's cool, but I could live my life without it, then I would say it's not validated yet. So it's really about how you make that initial customer feel. And Y Combinator, again, they talk a lot about this. It's better to have an extremely excited group of customers who are very small in number than 1,000 customers who feel lukewarm about what you're doing. So yeah, I would say there's no set number. It's really about how you make your customers feel and the impact that you have in their life.
So just to follow up on that, so what as one customer enough to convince a let's say, an angel investor or
No.
investor? So you need
Yeah,
more.
no. Yeah. So to validate for you and your team whether you're going in the right direction, you need one. For validating to an investor, it depends on the investor. So an angel might say, "Oh, you got 5 customers in a month. That's great." And maybe, I mean, it really depends on your product. If you're selling to enterprise, you're getting maybe 1 customer in the first 9 months if you're lucky. Like it takes the life cycle, the sales life cycle is just so long. So it depends on what type of business, but also it depends on the type of investor. So it could be 2 customers in a year is amazing for enterprise. It could be, 20 new users because maybe your platform that needs users and not really paying customers. Maybe it's 20 new users a week. For us, we've only got like just under 20 customers, but none of them have churned. And they all are very, like, extremely passionate about the product and they use it pretty much every day. We have success stories where people literally, like a videographer, got a job because of our product. Another person literally built her whole business using our product. And so it's about the impact. And that's what we're selling to investors right now is that we're finding ways to find these customers and convert them quickly. We retain them very well. And so now we need money to scale that operation. It's really about what are the specifics for your story, right? And your business, your niche, your type of customer. It definitely varies, but you want to figure out, basically for an investor, you want to figure out, we do have something that's valuable that really does impact people's lives. We do have the ability to find them and to sell and convert them. But now we need funds to make that process scalable. We need to do that much faster. That's what investors want to invest in.
Amazing.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the questions. Great questions.
Anthony, I saw you had raised your hand earlier. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, Danica, thank you so much. It's amazing, just a lot of useful information. And honestly, I have a lot of questions, but I will ask only one. It's about incorporation. Have you incorporated already in Canada? And what do you think about investments from the United States? And do you see any problems if your company will be incorporated in Canada? Any problems with raising money from the United States investors? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Anthony. So we are incorporated in Canada. I recommend doing that only at a time when you really, really need to, because you might end up changing things about your business and changing your business name and all those things. Like once you incorporate, it can be challenging. And also you have to file your business taxes, even if you didn't make money. And so it can be a bit of a headache. So definitely do that when you feel it's necessary, whether you need to hire folks or you're raising. And then to answer your other question, no, there's no issue with getting US investment or global investment for that matter as a Canadian-based, a Canada-based company. Yeah, that's easy. Like we did get a US-based investor. We're talking to US-based investors right now. Part of the reason why I'm in San Francisco. And I've heard that US investors love Canadian founders. We tend to be a little bit tighter on our unit economics than American founders. Apparently, I don't know, these are rumors, but yeah, US investors tend to like Canadian founders because we're much more careful about our unit economics.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Tanika, a couple of questions in the chat for you as well. I'm going to read Jane's question to you. How did you find your team and how did you deal with issues where you do not agree on a particular issue? In order to avoid possible conflict, is it easier to work as a sole proprietor?
Yeah, great question. I think, again, it depends on your business. I think as a tech startup, it's not easier to work alone. There are so many hats you have to wear, and especially if you want to scale your operations, it's really important to have a team. There are a few places you can find team members. We prefer to look for folks in our networks, folks that we've worked with, folks who have worked with people we know, because you want to hire for personality. In the tech and early business phase, you want to hire for mentality and personality, not skill sets. You want to hire for folks who are hungry about whatever the mission is of your business and curious about the space and learning what they need to learn in order to do their job well. You cannot train mentality or personality. You can train skill set and knowledge. You can backfill that after you've hired someone, but to find the self motivation to continue through the challenges that you're going to experience in the early days, like that is a personality thing. And so you want to find the folks who actually have those desires and that internal, that self motivation, because you can't create that. And so yeah, where to find your team? I recommend trying to make friends through programs like this. Accelerators are great places, like talking to the Y-Space team about the talent that you need to fill in your team can be really helpful. They might know people who are interested in the roles that you're trying to fill. Don't look for folks who have a ton of experience, because they're probably going to look for the pay that reflects that, and you might not have that in the early days. So you want to look for folks who are just hungry to be operating in your space, to be doing whatever it is that you need them to do, and who have the willingness to learn along the way, because nobody on our team knows what we need to do initially. Like, we have to learn that as we go. And so you want to look for people who have that learning mentality, who are willing to learn and they're not afraid of learning. And so, yeah, I highly recommend searching through your network, searching through accelerators. Students are great sources of talent and they have tons of potential. And so Ripen can be a great place to find folks. We found some of our team members through internship programs that we were able to access through Y-Space and other accelerators. We found some of our folks through just a recommendation from another founder friend. And it's about building that relationship with your team. One thing that I really want to emphasize is that in the earliest days of a business or a startup, it's important to, I mean, this is just my opinion and my approach. You can think differently and do differently, but I'm nobody's boss, right? We're all partners in this, especially because a lot of my team, for many months, we've gone without pay. And so we give everyone authority over their own space. We give everyone creative freedom over their own space and autonomy, and we trust each other as partners. And there's that respect, because yeah, it doesn't make sense to think of somebody as, below you or within a hierarchy when you're super early and scrappy and nobody knows what they're doing and you don't have any funds, like it just doesn't make sense, and people aren't going to want to stay in that environment and work through the hardest things that you're going to have to work through. So you want to empower everyone to be their own sort of operator and have that control and autonomy over their space. And you want to, really just empower everyone to be a co-partner in what you're building. When it comes to disagreements, we lead with respect. We basically, trust one another and understand that we're all trying to give our best intentions to the company. And so when it comes to disagreements, we talk it out. We use a lot of logic and reasoning to walk through why we believe this is the right approach, why we disagree, right? We rationalize a lot of what we discuss so that it's not like, hey, I just think we should go in this direction and I don't think you're right and I'm not going to share more about that. Like, you really want to open up and be communicative and, again, trust each other. And we have a phrase that we say a lot on our team, which is that this is not a hill I'm willing to die on, because a lot of the decisions that you're making, you need to make them quickly. And it doesn't matter if you make the right or wrong decision. You just need to make a decision and go forward. And then you'll see if it's right or wrong. And then you'll adapt. And so when we get hung up on these decisions, and usually because our egos are invested in it, it actually harms the business more to take a long time to make the decision than it does to make the wrong decision. So I would say trust your team. And maybe like adopt that mentality of like, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on. It's okay if we don't go in the direction that I think we should go in, or it's okay if I disagree with something, we have to make a decision, we have to move forward, and eventually we'll figure out and we'll see whether it was the right or wrong decision. And we should never hold people to, you know, like if you've made the wrong decision, that's okay. That's like part of the process, and we just needed to move forward. And so people should be, you know, encouraged to make decisions and to, you know, think thoroughly about them, but not to be afraid of potential failure that might come from it. Like at the end of the day, your team is your strongest asset, and so you got to cherish that, especially for smaller companies. Yeah.
Beautiful. Timo, you can ask your question.
Thank you, Alina. Tanika, thank you so much for your insights, your information. All the information has been extremely helpful, especially for me. I am a new tech entrepreneur. My background is in journalism, so this is a space that's completely new to me. So I really appreciate all of the information that you shared with me. You were talking about imposter syndrome, and I am currently the post child of imposter syndrome because I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning as time goes on. So to be specific, my product is an app, and so it's a dating app that is specifically designed for people that are looking for either serious or long-term relationships, or that are specifically looking for marriage. And so with this app, it's currently being built. So I've gone through the validation stage and all of that stuff, but my questions are very similar to Arnold. So I know that Arnold was specifically talking about the validation process. My questions are similar, but I would like to ask about the beta testing. So once the app, we're projecting that the app will be done, if everything goes according to plan, it'll be completed last week of November or first week of December. And once it's completed, we will be entering the beta stage, the beta testing stage. And I've been trying to do a lot of research on this, but I'm just having a very tough time because I'm talking to a lot of people about, you know, how to go about doing this the best way. So my questions are, you know, like how many people would you say is a good number to select for the beta testing for this kind of product? And what would you suggest would be the acceptable length of time for the beta testing period? And also, just like I said, like I'm talking to a lot of people, but I also don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go. So what would you say is the most effective way to really approach this? I know that it's a lot of questions, but it's all embedded in one. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And honestly, congratulations on, you know, what you're doing. And you're right, like it is kind of scary when you don't know what you're doing and you're learning along the way. But yeah, just rest assured that that's the case for every single founder, even experienced founders, right? Space that you're operating in is going to be new to you. Maybe it's new generally. Sorry about the background noise. And so it's okay to be learning as you go. I think that the number varies. I think it depends on how many customers or how many users you have engaged at the moment. It depends on maybe how many you've been doing discovery with, but you could run a beta with as little as like 3 or 5 users. In terms of the duration, I would recommend it being as long as whatever it is. So the life cycle of the user in terms of them being able to go from signing up to completing some kind of task, whether it's like one match, you're going to want to have your beta have enough time for them to experience that full kind of life cycle. And so, yeah, it's very dependent on you and your business and how long you think it might take for folks to do that. And you'll also want to give a lot of structure. You want to give a lot of instructions just to help your beta testers understand what it is you want. You don't want to like tell them specifically with like screenshots, click here and then click here. You want to give them tasks to complete or jobs to be done. So you might say, hey, today we really want to focus on our onboarding process. And so the task for today is simply to sign up and create a profile. Complete your profile. That's all I need you to do. And so when they try to do that, they'll let you know if there's challenges along the way, like, hey, I wasn't able to complete my profile because it's too many steps. And I wasn't able to finish it because, like life happens and I had to go cook dinner and then I forgot about it. And now it's a week later. And then you'll realize, okay, we need lesser steps or we need like ways to make that faster. And then you might say, okay, now I want you to try to find somebody to match with. So just give them really specific tasks without telling them, like go here, go here, go here, but give them a specific task to do and then see how they do that task and understand from their perspective what helped them do that task. What did they like about the process? What did they hate about the process? What was difficult about the process? And if you can, have them screen record or pop on Zoom with you when they're doing it, so that you can see for yourself like where they get hung up. And again, they won't get caught up with trying not to hurt your feelings or something, because that doesn't matter. All you need to know is whether what you're trying to do actually works for them and whether it aligns with, their natural sort of habit or workflow. But happy to, share more about that. If you want to ask Alina for my email, I'm happy to just share more around like how to set up a closed beta. I think a closed beta when you're starting out is best. Because you want to have that connection with the people who are using it and be able to have that feedback rather than strangers coming into the app and maybe churning because they don't understand what's going on. And then you feel bad, like you don't need to do that just yet. Look for people who you're connected with.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Amazing. Tanika, another question in the chat. Leila wants to know, how did you conduct market validation for your product, especially if you received a high value grant?
Yeah, so in terms of grants, we've only ever received a pretty small grant, $5,000. And that was actually the initial money that we used to create like the scrappiest version of Minute-Skill. I have never really received a super big grant. I mean, maybe the pitch competition, the $10,000 that we won recently, I don't know if you would consider that a grant. But in terms of the market validation for grants specifically, that's very challenging. Different grants have different criteria that they're looking for. I would say when it comes to market validation for yourself, I think, yes, it's important if you're in the tech space to understand like the TAM, SAM, SOM stuff and, like how big is the market? Is it growing? What's the CAGR and all of that stuff? Sure. But I think what's most important for you is looking at actual market trends that tell you your market is growing. And so for us, we look at things like, the operating system, or I should say, there are new operating systems being introduced that impact content creation. You can think of Vision OS from Apple will transform the way people create and share and consume content. We anticipate that will contribute to the growing content creator, like content creator space or economy. We anticipate that as traditional jobs might be disrupted by AI, people will have a lot more time and reason to create and consume content, specifically educational content. And so we expect to see that push the growth of the creator economy or the content creation market. So I think that looking at like tangible human behavior that you anticipate will impact your market, I think that is maybe more significant than just looking at like, I don't know, Globe News Mail or whatever it is, Globe News reports, market, something, so bunch of keywords. You guys know what I mean. Those who are in the tech space, it's like they're always talking about market trends and, this market is pegged at 22 billion and it's going to be 100 billion by 2033. Yeah, those numbers are helpful, but it doesn't actually tell you specifically like what's happening and why. So I would recommend looking at human behavior and broader indicators that tell you, your market will be impacted in one way or another.
Amazing, perfect. Just checking the chat to see if there are any other questions? Yeah, I think we've covered the chat. Tanika, I have a question for you. You spoke about not being scared of failures, but the reality is it's very hard to come to terms with the fact that something that you worked for months might not work out and you need to pivot. So how do you cope with that? Um,
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that part of our team culture is very helpful. So this might not be helpful for solopreneurs, and I'll share maybe a bit for you in a moment. But if you have a team or anybody in your circles, could be founder friends that you met through Y Space, right? Other business owners. That culture is really important for kind of picking you up. So you need a community. Like people say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to build a business. Like absolutely. So you want to surround yourself with people who have that mentality, whether it's a WhatsApp group chat or on Slack. YSpace has the Slack community. Share your experiences, because chances are there's a lot of other people who are experiencing the same thing, and they can help you realize that it's normal, it's natural, and it's not just you, it's actually the space that we're operating in. It's just the game we play. And so it's just a matter of like, yeah, surrounding yourself with those people who get it and who can help pick you up when you feel low. And it's also a mentality that you have to hold within yourself. I I would be lying if I said that I'm not afraid of failure deep in my heart. Like of course, like it scares me. Like thinking, okay, maybe one day somebody could come out of the blue and just like wipe us out. I don't know. This is the space we operate in. There's a lot of risk. But I think what's more important is to have the courage to continue anyway, right? Courage is not about being not afraid, it's actually about being afraid and continuing anyway. That's courage. And so, yeah, the mentality that you need to have for yourself is that when you start to feel afraid and when you start to feel anxiety and you start to feel like I'm not good enough for this, you got to remind yourself, like, hey, wait a minute. These are just kind of normal responses that I'm having to the precarity of my work. And it's okay. And this isn't actually true. This is just a temporary feeling. This is something I say to my team all the time. It's never as bad as it feels in the moment, and time will make everything much better. And so don't let those feelings in that moment maybe make you think, oh my God, I got to give up. Just recognize that it's temporary and it's normal, but it's also not true. And you just got to kind of push through it, and things will get better and you will get through those challenges. Sometimes it takes us days to get through a challenge. Sometimes I'm prompting a model and it's not giving me what I want for the life of me, and it takes me days to get there. And in that time, I'm like, oh my God, maybe I can't do it. Like maybe it's just not possible. And then I have to snap out of it and remind myself, like, no, anything is possible. I just got to find it. The solution's there. I just need to find it. And so, yeah, I think it's like a mentality you need to have in yourself, and also surround yourself with other people with that mentality so they can help remind you when you inevitably forget in those moments. And that's okay.
Thank you for that. That was very, very well put, very inspiring. So a couple of other questions have popped in the chat as well, and some of them I feel like you've answered already, so maybe you could quickly comment on these. Oops, I've lost the question. For a B2B consulting business, how do you advise to find clients for your business?
To find clients for your business, B2B. Yeah, figure out where those business owners are, right? Like where do they exist online? Business owners, probably LinkedIn. It depends on the type. But yeah, just try to make an initial assumption. Where do these people probably exist online? And then go to those spaces. You can be super scrappy with it, leave a comment under their content, engage with them in some organic way, be thoughtful about it. Of course, you don't want to comment like, hey, buy my product every time. You want to give them like insightful, thoughtful engagement. But yeah, you really just want to start with an assumption and then go and test it and see what happens. And then make another assumption and test it and see what happens. But yeah, think about where your customers probably are and then just go there and test it out.
Amazing, perfect. So I hope that answers your question. Then there's another request for um, a link for getting students that can help in digital marketing. So that's also, these links are included in Tanika's presentation deck. So I will be sending those over tomorrow via an email, as well as all the other links that Tanika shared in the chat. So don't worry about that.
You guys, thank you so much. And like I mentioned, please connect and let Alina know if there's anything burning that you really want to discuss. And you can get my email from her.
You've been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanika. This was extremely inspiring. Thank you for sharing all your insights, your experience, your resources with us. It was a fantastic session, and we really, really appreciate you taking out time. I know you've been super busy, so really really appreciate you taking out time.